أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا ربنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اجعل لي وزيرا من أهلي هارون أخي أشد به أزري وأشركه في أمري كي نسبحك كثيرا ونذكرك كثيرا إنك كنت بنا بصيرا وصلى اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum everyone. So inshallah we will continue with the 17th word. This is the section of a fruit of the pine, cedar, juniper, and black cypress trees in the uplands of Barla. Some reflections from the author on when he was taken captive, and then he was thinking about his life, his world, and the changes that have been going through. And in a very descriptive fashion, he's been describing the scenery as if there are things around him are, the leaves are dancing with when the air blows, and all he says you can see the display of dancing and rapturous performance of praise and glorification of all the things in the universe. So he sees a particular way of the things in the universe, how they are worshiping. And he had made a point about, like the tree, the way it stands with its branches up as if it's praying, stretches out like its hands are stretched out in at the court of divine mercy, and just showing its form of worship, how it's displaying that. So we can see of everything in the universe in terms of how they're in their existence. They also show that kind of symbol, or that everything is worshiping. So I will continue how basically that's how his eyes and how his understanding, his heart was picking it up when he saw the display of these trees and plants, flowers, universe, that he was hearing the songs of praise to the all glorious one. So I'll start with they seem, let's continue. They seem to have a duty of making the dead hear the pre-eternal songs and sorrowful voices, who no longer hear worldly voices and words. So this display from the universe, he said, they seem to have a duty of making the dead hear the pre-eternal songs. So anybody who is aware or seeing that, so even the dead would become alive by seeing this marvelous display of things that are happening in the universe, these changes that are continuously happening. And it shows them, they hear the pre-eternal songs and sorrowful voices, who no longer hear worldly voices. So it's a way of passing through the worldly voices and hearing the pre-eternal songs, so the eternal voices and words. The spirit understands from this that beings respond with glorification. Beings respond with glorification to the manifestation of the glorious Maker's names. They perform a graceful chant. So the beings respond with glorification to the manifestation of the glorious Maker's names. They perform a graceful chant. So the heart reads the mystery of divine unity from these trees, each like an embodied sign from the elevated word order of this miraculousness. That is, there is so wonderful an order, art, and wisdom in the manner of their creation, and order, art, and wisdom qualities in the manner of the creation of the trees, that if all the causes in existence had the power to act and choose, and they gathered together, they could not imitate them. So it showed certain in the embodiment of the trees. The author sees that there, of course, everybody who's looking at it, any tree, you can see that there is a wonderful order, art, and wisdom in the manner of how they are there in their creation. And of course, if all the causes in existence, so everything that are results, we see that they're all created as well. So how can they have any power to choose, act, and choose, even if they're gathered together? They could not imitate the creation of the trees. So this is how the heart is reading. And now he says, the soul, on seeing them, sees the whole earth as revolving in a clamorous tumult of separation and seeks enduring pleasure. It receives the meaning. You will find it in abandoning worship of this world. You will find it in abandoning worship of this world. The mind discovers from the chanting animals and trees and the vociferous plants and air a most meaningful order of creation, embroidery of wisdom and treasury of secrets. I'll read this paragraph again. The soul, on seeing the trees, sees the whole earth. So from one particular creation of the trees, sees the whole earth. The soul gets the taste, the whole earth, as revolving in a clamorous tumult of separation and seeks enduring pleasure. So the whole earth is revolving in a clamorous tumult of separation, as in the worldly, as he voices, as he had labeled it before. No longer hear the worldly voices, and then going towards the pre-eternal song. So here he's saying the one thing sees the whole world is revolving in a clamorous tumult of separation, which is the worldly voice, and then seeks enduring pleasure. So the soul receives the meaning. You will find it in abandoning worship of this world. So you will find this enduring pleasure in abandoning worship of this world. So finding enduring pleasure in going past this with this worldly voice, because looking at the qualities and going towards the maker of those qualities. So abandoning worship of this world. The mind discovers from the chanting animals and trees and the vociferous plants and air a most meaningful order of creation, embroidery of wisdom and treasury of secrets. So the reasoning also starts working along with the soul. So the human being is really engaged with the heart, the soul, the mind, reasoning. Now the desirous soul receives such pleasure from the murmuring air and whispering leaves that it forgets all metaphorical pleasures. And through abandoning these, which endow it with life, wants to die in the pleasure of reality. The desirous soul receives such pleasure from the murmuring air and whispering leaves. The desirous soul receives such pleasure from the murmuring air and whispering leaves that it forgets all metaphorical pleasures. So the pleasures for this world are all metaphorical. And through abandoning these which endow it with life, through abandoning these metaphorical pleasures which endow it with life, so the endows the soul with life, wants to die in the pleasure of reality. So the soul is endowed with life, it wants to die in the pleasure of reality. So what is this reality? That the worldly things are metaphorical, temporary, and goes to eternity, which is the reality. The imagination sees that appointed angels have entered. The imagination sees that appointed angels have entered these trees like bodies, from whose branches hang many flutes. It is as though an eternal monarch has clothed the angels in the trees for a splendid parade, accompanied with the sounds of 1,000 flutes. It is as though an eternal monarch has clothed the angels in the trees for a splendid parade, accompanied with the sounds of 1,000 flutes. Thus the tree show themselves to be not lifeless, unconscious bodies, but highly conscious and meaningful. So when you see the meaning side of the trees or anything in creation, the, the author is sharing how the meaningful side is what he calls the angelic side. The imagination sees that appointed angels. So there are the meaning is brought by angels, and which alludes to the qualities that we see in the trees in this example. So all those branches display a certain qualities, and it hangs, he says, many flutes. It's as though as eternal monarch has clothed the angels in the trees for a splendid parade, accompanied with the sounds of 1,000 flutes. Does the trees show themselves to be not lifeless, unconscious bodies, but highly conscious and meaningful? Very interesting how each and everything can be seen as highly conscious and meaningful. So just taking the example of the tree, we can see everything in the universe can be seen with their angelic side and qualities, and thus it gains this consciousness and meaning with the meaning that it gets. The flutes are pure and powerful, as though issuing from a heavenly exalted orchestra. The flutes are pure and powerful, as though issuing from a heavenly exalted orchestra. The mind does not hear from them the sorrowful plaints of separation that foremost Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi and all lovers hear. So the mind no longer hears from them the sorrowful plaints of separation that foremost Jalaluddin Rumi and all lovers hear. But dominical praise and laudation and grateful thanks offered to the most merciful one, the ever-living, the self-subsistent. So the mind hears dominical praise and laudation and grateful thanks offered to the most merciful one, the ever-living, the self-subsistent. Since the trees have all become bodies, their leaves have become tongues. At the touching of the breeze, each recites over and over again, "It is He, it is He." With the benedictions of their lives, they proclaim their Maker to be ever-living and self-subsistent. With the tongue of disposition, they continuously declare, "O God, and seek the necessities of their lives from him, from the treasury of mercy, and through the tongue of their manifesting life from top to bottom, they recite his name of O Living One. So with the tongue of disposition, they continuously declare, O God, and seek the necessities of their lives from him, from the treasury of mercy, and through the tongue of their manifesting life from top to bottom, like their whole being of the trees, they recite his name of O Living One. O ever living and self-subsistent one, through the names of ever living and self-subsistent, endow the heart of this wretched one with life, and bestow sound direction on his confused mind. Ameen. So this particular section, as we've been reading from, I think last week also we started it, how the author is really taking his pleasure from this world and transforming that into his eternal pleasure. It means you have to do the observation, go through, engage your senses. Somebody had a comment. I mean, okay. Engage your senses, use your spirit, your heart, your mind, and see the meaningful side of the things, which, I mean, how he describes it is in a very nice, beautiful way, where he's seeing everything as like songs or odes, praising, sees them as dances when the leaves are moving with the wind. So the trees really gain a very significant aspect in his view as being created, as manifesting many qualities of such as ever living and self-subsistent one. How the whole human being is engaged to recognize this. Sarah, go ahead.
I haven't been here consistently, so maybe it's the fault of that, but I'm just confused with the voice, the sad voice, the voice of grief. It's like such a heavy tone in that the paragraph, the soul on seeing them sees the whole earth as revolving in a clamorous tumult of separation. So I understand the joyous glorification, how the tree is as though an angel, playing this incredible sound that very clearly says, and I was wondering, Dr. Ali, what was it is he? How does that translate in Arabic? But Al-Hayy al-Qayyum, like the one who gives life and sustains life. So I hear like the loud, I can see how the trees are as though playing this flute, that is like rejoicing in this incredible demonstration of meaning. But I'm just confused with that heavy tone, the clamorous tumult of separation. So if anybody can clarify that.
Sure, the floor is open. So that's Huwa, I think it is he, Huwa, and then Al-Hayyul Qayyum, as you said. It is he, the ever-living, self-subsistent. And of course, the separation of this that goes into the transience of this world. As I think this is a section we discussed about La Uhibbul Afilin, on how Abrahamic teaching was like you cannot get attached to the transience of this world, but you have to seek eternity. So that's where the pain point is. But let's hear from Farah. Go ahead.
Assalamualaikum. When we go on the previous page where we started from almost today, I see the author sort of in the manner in which we've been reading these texts for the past few weeks, of this balance between what he says is the heart, or let's say the emotions or experience, subjective experience, the soul or the spirit, and the mind. And then each of them has a function that the author describes, and each of them have a capacity or a, let's say, a function to connect with an aspect of the reality, of one of which is of the soul, which in its nature desires or is oriented towards its source, and that's sort of its nature, in the spirit being completely in search and also being able to recognize its source. And so in that nature of the spirit, it is looking at all of creation in terms of its connection or source of existence. And so something being created would mean that it is separated from its source. And so there is this element of sorrow expressed in the function of the soul. But then, as the author explains, that the mind and the observations of the mind and the experience of the heart brings it to it the evidence that these things are in fact not sorrow in being separated from the source, but rather are extolling or manifesting the attributes of the creators, and are what he is expressing as, in their function of doing as they're created, they are glorifying and they're rejoicing. And, contrary to, if you look at only a very narrow perspective, they are not in pain. And so I see this being balanced by the author in describing these ways of knowing. I have my own questions about various other things, but to Sarah's point, and I guess on the following page, where he mentions the idea that the flutes are pure and powerful, and the mind does not hear from them sorrowful plaints of separation, but rather praise and laudation. So a very extreme view, as represented in a certain genre of literature, is that there's only pain in separation, but not seeing to the other aspects of the human reality, that they are in fact displaying the attributes of their creator, and in it are in fact glorifying and rejoicing in the way that they are created. So that's just my rough thought.
All right, thank you. So hold on to your question. So anybody else wants to comment on the confusion Sarah has? Or maybe Sarah, you can restate what your confusion is on.
Well, okay, I can restate the confusion, but then also I'd like to Jazakallah khair, Farah, for that. And also Suhail for answering the question in the chat. Who, it seems, is the translation of it is he. So my confusion was, it seems like a very, like when I look at the tree right now, I can see this life and it's like bursting with life. So there's a clear, like loud, powerful flute. Mama, this one, this So there's a clear, loud flute being played that proclaims a life giver that is self-subsistent. But I was confused as to why there was such his descriptive language, rahimahullah, is so filled with emotion, and there was such a heavy tone on the clamorous. So the whole earth is revolving. So that's even more emphasis. The whole earth, the soul sees. Like when I look at the tree, do I see the whole earth as revolving? Revolving in a clamorous tumult of separation and seeks enduring pleasure. So what Farah then explained to answer that confusion, like why is there such a heavy grief? Like it seems like such a heavy grief of separation. And it's from what I understood from what Farah explained is that in the display of this angel dressed in this costume of a green flower, a green tree, in the existence of it is the separation of this being from the eternal plane and into the physical earth. And in that existence is separation because it's present here in a temporary space. So it's as though it's crying like, oh, I'm here away from now in this temporary domain where my leaves are bound to wither, and I'm now in the form of a temporary thing. But then from so I guess it's saying the desirous soul then will look, and the imagination will see the reality of the meaning being displayed.
All right, are you done?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else who wants to go? So Farah has a comment, the soul has the need to be reunited with its source and sees in creation that fundamental need. All right, thank you for that. So anybody else wants to share anything? Brother Ali, go ahead.
Thank you. You got the message because I cannot raise my hand as a host. Now, the whole text is very important, very interesting methodology that the author is presenting to us. First of all, we are reading the declarations through their making noise with the blow of the wind. It is a kind of description of what is going on in this world, but the voice that the kinds of the pine, cedar, whatever, the black cypress trees, cypress or cypress trees, these trees have no fruit. Excuse me. According to materialist people, if you ask them why the fruits are there, they said because they are useful, they have fruit, etc. They clean the air. But when we look at the through binocular of the Quranic view, which is the representation of human reality, we see that these animals, as the author states here, these plants, these trees, although they don't have fruit that we immediately get and benefit from, but they speak to our spirit, our heart, our soul, our mind, our desires soul, nafs al-hawa'i, and our imagination. All human qualities, different human qualities, they speak to us by their voice. Now, there is a tradition in Muslim scholarship or in Muslim knowledge, whatever it is, in the Muslim heritage, let's say Islamic heritage, the well-known scholars, classical scholars, they don't pay attention on this kind of subjects at all. They just concentrate on what Quran says, what the letters of the Quran really means, and how do they refer to the life of the Prophet, etc. That is their interest, and Arabic grammar and the rhetoric of the Quran. Study from there. But what the universe says in its existence are not really taken into consideration among this classical scholarship. But on the other hand, there are some sort of philosophers and some sort of theologians talk about the nature of creation, which is related to Farah's question. It is very fine question, and the answer is very needs to be finely tuned. Now, among these theologians, we have two branches. One of them, one of them, philosophers following mostly the methodology Greek philosophers followed, and the other kind is which are called Ishraqiyun, illuminators, or some illuminators, I think, Ishraqiyun. These have the tendency, this Ishraqiyun side have the tendency of two sides. One, let's come to this philosophers. Philosophers say the universe they don't deny God. No, none of the Muslim philosophers denied the creatorship of God at all, as far as I know. So they accepted the creator. But they said the creation is coming from the creator, which is called the theory of the name is theory of Sudur. Comes from God. Ishraqiyun emphasized on the fact that creation is not coming from God, but reflection of the qualities of the creator. So it caused two branches in Sufi tradition. So some of them were influenced by this theory of Sudur. It means deriving from God. The other is reflection of the qualities of the creator. Now, those people who follow this tradition somehow influenced the Rumi tradition and Rumi side of the Sufi tradition. They are mostly emphasizing on the complaining of separation. This separation means infisal. Now it is in Arabic. So infisal means we are separated from our origin. But Nursi says, no. Although we are created beings and as manifestations of the qualities of the creator, we are directly reflecting the qualities of our creator, including the trees and what the voices they make, as Rumi interpreted the voice of the claim, the pain of separation. But Nursi-like people, and one side of the Ibn Arabi tradition, originally, which Nursi said, no, it is just declaration. like the reflection of the qualities of sun in anything, let's say in a mirror, the reflection is not separated from its origin, but we see the light in the mirror is not really crying out, complaining, sorrowful pains of separation, but being glorified. By glorifying the Creator, they are entertaining the joy of declaration of their source of existence. I have depicted a very rough a picture of the Muslim scholarship. Of course, what we understand, if we see that we are not reflecting the qualities of our Creator, we feel alone here, thrown away, which is these people interpreted hubut of the term hubut in the Quran as God said to Adam after eating or trying to eat the tree and gaining eternity. And then God said, okay, ihbitu. That is called hubut theory. Hubut theory, which was taken from the Quranic word, says, get down out of my place, my presence, which means separation. Whereas hubut is understood by the one branch of very generally accepted branch of Sufi tradition as not really completely thrown away from the presence of God, but training to recover from their mistake that they committed. How? By asking for forgiveness. It means declaring the glory of his Creator, and then after declaring the glory of his Creator in their life, connecting themselves, which is called wuslat, rather than infisal, but wusla. Not fasl, but wusla. There are different words, actually. One of them is from fasale, the other one is from wasale. Although it sounds like it, fa and wow, but fasala is separation. Wasala is arriving and getting together, meeting. So when they, Adam and his partner, his wife, it means the other creatures, of course, like Adam, when they are sent on earth, they declare the glory of their Creator by connecting themselves. What's the wuslat now? Meeting, connecting themselves to the Creator through asking for forgiveness, not the pain or sorrowful planes of separation, but declaration of the joy of their connection with their Creator. So the whole text is really saying that rather than ignoring completely the stupid understanding of materialist view, because they say the universe is just by itself out there and functioning by chance, that they produce fruit, they clean air, all this materialistic interpretation were the concerns. But Islamic tradition emphasizes on the aspect of the creation which really illuminates the spirit, heart, soul, mind, desire, souls, imaginations of human beings. So fully satisfying human beings by witnessing the qualities of their Creator manifested in their existence. So if I have not confused your mind about this Islamic tradition, which some of us may need it, just to know what is going on generally in the Muslim world heritage. It's a Muslim scholarship heritage, but Nursi is much well aware of this heritage and saying that no, the universe is not really crying, no, sorrowful pains, but joyful declaration, as if every creature here is declaring in an orchestra-like music group, whole universe. That is very comforting for human feelings, and not feeling really that we are completely separated from the world, but from our creator, and we are imprisoned in this world, although prison, the word, if it is taken materialistically, it is definitely not a prison, it is a dungeon, painful dungeon. Not only the prison, which prison is a very light language, dungeon, really. But when you see what they declare, oh, it is just a joyful orchestra singing out the names, the qualities of their creator. So this beautiful description of the difference between materialistic worldview and Islamic worldview or Quranic worldview is very vivid, and we can really understand it. Alhamdulillah, thank God. But at the same time, we need to know also what the tradition, Islamic scholarship, intelligence, tradition is. We have to know where we stand and which one is much more appropriate to our reality or not. Okay, so this one, Suhail referred to the Quran. Let's see this. I need to share it. تسبح له السماوات السبع والأرض ومن فيهن وإن من شيء إلا يسبح بحمده ولكن لا تفقهون تسبيحهم إنه كان حليما غفورا. Let me see the translation. The seven heavens and the earth and whatever is in them exalt him. Correct. Oh, I agree. And there's not a thing except that it exalts God by his praise. That is also appropriate to my understanding. But you don't understand their way of exalting. That's what I want to learn about this. وَلَكِنْ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ. Not the translation is wrong. I'm using a very strong language to attract your attention. Not the Quran doesn't say, but you don't understand their exalting. Quran says you are not understanding the tasbihat. Why? Because you are not careful. Because you don't know how to look at the universe. Because you haven't received the right and perfect understanding of the Quranic teaching. You are not doing that, although you must be able to do it and you must understand it. But if you don't see this glorification, you don't understand. That is why we need to make this phrase the present continuous tense, the translation. But you, unfortunately, you are not understanding their way of exalting or their exaltations. Indeed, he is ever forbearing and forgiving. This is the argument in, again, Islamic scholarship, whether we are not able to understand their tasbihah, or we are able to understand, but because of our negligence, because of our ignorance, not paying necessary attention to them, we may not understand it. So as we read this text, this text clearly states that you or we human beings can comfortably understand their separation, their declaration of the glory of their creator. It means exaltation. So we are understanding it. Look at all the explanations we read, made it clear that we are understanding it. We can understand it as long as we don't condition ourselves. So it's a beautiful text, lots of interesting points to be needed, to be shared with you. That's why I spoke a lot and a long discussion. Inshallah, I would like to hear your comments about what is read and what I, especially if I have said something which doesn't make sense to you, please warn me and let me know.
Yeah, I have one question. So you said about the separation, as they say, is in separation in origin. That's what one camp is, or in origin from the originator. That's what one camp says. And the other camp you said is more connecting, as Sarah put the summary over there in the chat. So to me, the in origin part is very interesting. I found in how he says that the separation, you're not never separating from your origin in your existence. So that, which makes sense. So, but I never saw this when I read this initially. I didn't see that he was mentioning about the sorrowful plaints of separation that he says that you may hear, but you may also hear the other praises and laudation in a very beautiful manner. He explains that.
No, that's correct, but let's emphasize the difference between, rather than seeing the sorrowful or hearing the sorrowful pains of separation, we should hear the grateful pleasure, laudations, and grateful thanks offered to the merciful one. So it looks like he is saying every branch of a tree is a flute joined to the orchestra of the universal music, song. That's what I understood. And also historical background makes it clear that this theory of Sudur is wrong anyways. I mean, most of the scholars agreed that the theory of Sudur is wrong. So if the theory of Sudur is wrong, so seeing the word as declaring separation must be so wrong. That's what I understood.
Thank you. Suhail, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Assalamualaikum. I just thought on what Ali member said in the verse, and that the Quran talks about tasbihat or glorification, and it doesn't really talk about the things crying out in separation or in pain, but glorifying Him or showing or exalting Him or thanking Him and demonstrating gratitude just for being, even for a momentary existence. I think Nursi explained somewhere else in the words that even if it's a second of life or a moment of life, that is sufficient to declare, as he says, it is He and O God and O living one. So it's, there is no pain. It's I guess, happiness or gratitude and glorification from things. It's interesting. It's human beings who perceive it as being, as this world is separation, but not the things themselves. like I don't observe that sort of separation from the world in and of itself. As he says, when the wind is blowing and you hear the trees or the water in a river, you don't hear pain there, but you hear sort of something happy, because it brings joy to a person. So, and going back to the verse, it's just that I don't. I guess if I don't understand the things glorifying their maker, in some sense, then maybe I don't understand who I am. Like how am I sort of a reflection or a manifestation of my maker? And so maybe I need to look at myself first, and then I'll be able to understand the world around me as being a constant manifestation of his name. So fundamentally connected. So not separated.
Thank you, Zuhail. Any other comment? Farah, you still have your question, or is it answered?
No, this was very helpful. The one thing I was also thinking is that the school of thought believing in the idea of a source and origin and a separation would also not be, let's say, in agreement with the idea of, in this author's writings, of continuous creation, where things are coming into being in every moment. And so there is no one moment in time where things were separated and don't go back, but that they're in constant state of being given existence. And so then came to mind that it is also related to the author's discussions of resurrection, or this the concept that it is actually a reflection of the creator's attributes. The other comment I had was that I think this might be my gap in knowledge, but the author mentions the imagination sees the appointed angel. So the faculty, whether it is either over here like khayal or mithal, either one, people translate it as both. But we don't necessarily in our discussions talk too much about the imagination or the imaginative or imaginal faculty and its interaction with, let's say in this case, the world of angels. And yeah, so that's one observation. It seems to be, unless this is a topic that the author discusses in detail when he does talk about angels later in the book, I'm not aware. But it would be helpful for me if I can understand more about this notion of imagination, and it's connected to a very important concept here, to the recognition of angels, which I think is also something that comes from the school of thought that is looking more towards creation as reflection rather than as origin.
All right. Anybody wants to comment on that? The faculty of imagination, just like every other faculty, which is supposed to be used, faculty of tasting, hearing, seeing, reasoning. As a whole human being, every faculty is employed for particular aspects of recognizing the truth, the reality. And here I think as he was making the case from the heart, the soul, the mind, and then he says the imagination sees the angels, basically alluding to his view as how he's looking at the trees as being continuously being decorated, designed by, in his imagination, angels. So imagination is also being used because you physically, your eyes cannot really see the angels. As a human being, you have to live with the angels, as in your understanding and your imagination has to be involved there as well. That's how I would see it. But somebody else can further elaborate. Brother Ali, go ahead.
All human qualities work in harmony with each other. And each of them has different function, different aspect of the same purpose of the creation of human beings to fulfill, to help, or to support the purpose of human creation. So heart has different function, feelings have different function, mind has different function. Of course, even human ego, egoistic self, which is translated here, desirous soul. The original language is really nefsul hawaii. So, they all support each other. Why? For example, nefs wants this Hawaii, nefs in Hawaii, the desirous soul wants immediate satisfaction. But is it bad? No, at all. It is very good. Why? Ego wants immediate satisfaction, but heart says, no, immediate satisfaction doesn't satisfy me. It doesn't satisfy you either. So be careful. Your desire for immediate satisfaction is wrong. But because of this alternative, human heart gets even clearer and better understanding of what really eternal satisfaction is like, as opposed to temporary, immediate satisfaction to permanent and full satisfaction, perfect satisfaction. That is how human beings work. If the nefis did not happen, it means this desirous soul did not happen in my existence, I would never appreciate the value of eternal satisfaction, let alone its existence. I wouldn't be aware of its existence at all. So they complement each other. Although one side is positive, the other side is functioning as a negative element in human perfection or human process of perfection. Same goes with the imagination. So imagination is a free, unlimited quality of human being, which is free. Doesn't really say this is good, this is bad, etc., but brings all the information to the other human feelings like mind, like heart. So these are like human soul, ruh. So these are the other elements in human being. Imagination brings this news, as it is described here, that every branch is singing like angels are declaring God's qualities, and their songs are also declaring God's qualities. This imagination brings this scenery to the attention of the minds and heart of human beings. Now, what happens? Mind and heart get satisfaction, but imagination could have bring a horrible pain of meaninglessness, imprisonment, and complete separation of having a purposeful existence. And heart and mind rejects it. Oh, it is horrible. I don't like it. It doesn't fit my capacity. Both sides say no. So imagination also brings this possibility, but this alternative possibilities, but imagination can bring both sides at the same time. Whereas desirous soul, desirous egoistic soul brings only one negative side. Both of them are helpers of other fundamental human qualities. All of them make human ruh, spirit. So they are complementary, but at the same time, they may have different, opposite, contradicting functions. That is how human beings can operate in this world. And this is always, we really, excuse me. Now, that is how we understand our reality and reality of our human free will. Because at the end of the day, we are all responsible for our human free will. Which way we are going to choose, what the egoistic desires soul brings to us, and we confirm it, we accept it, we welcome it, and be and follow a miserable life, or the imagination brings, if you hear the imagination from one side, it can imagine and bring the news to me that a joyful music is displayed here. The creatures are dancing, happy, pleasure. It can imagine. The imagination it can bring this tableau, if you like. And also imagination can bring the horrible, meaningless, purposeless, imprisoned life. Both of them. So every element of human nature must be utilized. They are there to be utilized. Anyway, we practically utilize them. We practically utilize them, even we are aware of it or not. But that is what I understood the function of imagination. Imagination can bring any kind of scenery to our world because it is limitless, whereas ego looks at only negative side, and heart and mind looks at especially heart looks at the positive side, desires the positive side. Mind is the tool in the hands of human free will. So this way or another way, as we gave the example of using the steering wheel of a car, mind is there according to the choice of the driver. But heart always desires the best. Human egoistic soul or desirous soul, which is translated here, well, desire is maybe good, maybe bad, really. So we have to say egoistic soul. Egoistic, egocentric soul always wants to choose the meaningless part and seeing that, look, there is no meaning, there is no purpose. I want to be independent. And mind must be employed, heart must reject it. So we are in between, this way or another way, free to choose. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah, thank you. So I think we can stop here and then we'll continue next time with another imagination, I think, looking at the stars, his reflection on the utterance of the stars. Next week, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka anta al-alimul hakim. Wa akhiru da'wahum alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.